even since 2020, our sort
Hmm.
of concept of time has completely shifted. And everyone kept thinking, well, it's going to come back to normal, whatever normal is. It's going to come back to a steadier pace. And it's only getting faster.
I feel that humanity as a collective, we got some shadow work to go through, and we've been going through it.
Researching what colors will make you eat more, spend more, feel a specific emotion. It's not just woo, is because black represents all color. Like it's literally made up of every single vibration. The most accurate psychic reading you can ever receive is going to be from yourself.
To empower people to look within themselves. All the great gurus, all the great yogis, all the great ascended masters, all of them say the power is within you. I'd like to welcome to the show Dougal Fraser. How you doing, Dougal?
I'm great, Alex. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Our mutual friend connected us, Sarah Landon. And after I saw some of the work that you've been doing, I was like, this is going to be an interesting conversation,
Oh,
to
thank
say
you.
the least. Yeah, yeah. You're a psychic. You're a psychic medium, or just or a psychic?
I mean, I'm all of the above. It's one-stop shopping. I tend to sort of talk about myself as being a clairvoyant because most of what I do is visual. So that's sort of my
Mhm.
specialty.
When you say visual, that means like you're getting images as things come into you, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, it started for me that I actually see color and energy around people. And the way that I have to do that is by listening to the sound of someone's voice. So when someone speaks, I start to see energy and color in my mind's eye. It will get deeper than that. If I'm in a private session, I might see symbols, I might see pictures, I might see filmed like little shots for what feel like from a movie, but it always
Mhm.
starts with color and energy for me. So for me,
Mhm.
that's the aura. From the scientific community, they would say that I have synesthesia, which is when two senses in the brain overlap.
Mhm.
So you'll hear, if you look this up on YouTube, like kids that listen to music, they'll see different colors, or days of the week,
Mhm.
they categorize by different colors. So my language has always been through the lens of color. That's how my work started.
Oh, that's amazing. So did this start at the very beginning when you were a child, or was there a time of normalcy and then all of a sudden this happened? How did it work?
Normalcy, how dare you? There was never
How dare you?
normalcy.
How dare you, sir?
Normalcy would no, not even interested. Actually, I mean, my belief system is that we're all born inherently intuitive. We all have
Sure,
psychic ability. I do not see
sure.
this as a gift. I'm not special in any way. The difference with me, though, is that my mother in particular encouraged me to talk about it. So the story goes that by the time I was standing in the crib, I would talk about seeing colors around people and hearing voices. My mother was delighted and like burying crystals in the yard and like taking me to her trance channeler. It was the 80s, so it's trance channeling. My dad, on the other hand, was like, we got a live one and sent me to therapy and went to get my eyes checked. So I sort of had this balance of being encouraged to talk about it, but also my dad being a little bit skeptical and basically wanting to make sure that I didn't have a personality disorder. So far, so good.
Sure. Mhm.
But it was always a part of my life. And sort of the idea of the afterlife was a part of my life. When I was 8, my sister was diagnosed with cancer. She's a cancer survivor. But the idea that she could pass was on the table. So I started reading books about NDEs, near death experiences, and just, anything that I could sort of figure out and try to make some understanding or rationalization from. I was just fascinated with the afterlife.
And how old were you when this was happening?
Really early. So, do you remember back in the day when you'd have to make dioramas for a book report? Do you remember that?
Obviously, obviously,
Okay.
yes.
So for those of you watching, if you don't remember, you'd have to take a shoebox and you'd have to put like a scene from the book or like a theme. And so in my class, I want to say this is like fourth or fifth grade. Everybody's doing like their favorite actor or their favorite athlete. I read a book on NDEs. So I put cotton balls at the bottom of the book. The book. This is
I'm
a true story. And
I'm
I,
laughing now because I could picture this thing in my head already.
And I hung angels from string dangling. And I got up in front of the class and said, did you know that children who die report seeing a light at the end of the tunnel? And I remember my English teacher like, woo, like eyes coming out of their head, like this is not a topic for public schools. But I bought a deck of tarot cards when I was 8 years old. I channeled entities at sleepaway camp as a teenager. It was just always a part of my environment and my belief system.
That's insane. So how did you, I mean, it sounds like you were kind of programmed at the factory like this. So like your software and hardware are kind of built for this.
Right.
it didn't seem like any time in your journey that you had a um like you were having struggles with it, or like, oh my God, am I going crazy because I hear voices in my head, or I'm seeing this stuff. Because it happened so early, it was kind of just your life, your normal experience, or
I
did you
mean,
actually have that a little bit?
when I got to like my teenage years, you're not the
Ooh.
cool kid on the playground when you're whipping out tarot cards and crystals. So when you're the gay, overweight psychic boy, like it's not the. So I started to pull it in a little bit. But
Right.
here's the serious thing, like, truth be told, my intuition was born out of trying to figure out if an environment was safe. I'm a sexual abuse survivor. My sister had cancer.
Oh,
There was a lot of drama in the environment. So in the
okay.
beginning, for me, it was just a hobby. Two
Mhm.
things. If I could find out whether or not this environment was safe, I would do that with my intuition. And then the second thing is it was way more fun for me to focus on your problems than my own problems. So it became a little bit of a crutch for me to tune into someone else, for me to read someone's cards and talk about their struggle, pulled me away from my own power. It wasn't until I was like 19, 20 that I realized I had to work on myself emotionally, spiritually. My psychic ability was a byproduct, but I really had to sort of clean house if this was the direction that my life was supposed to go in.
It's very interesting. I've spoken to a couple of psychics in my day. I've never heard anyone using their abilities as a coping mechanism to kind of project outside of themselves and not having to deal with their own crap, own trauma, own stuff, own baggage. Because we all do that. I mean, everyone does
100%.
that. Everybody
100%.
does that. They shove it down. This is where
Yep.
cancer comes from. This is where disease
Yep.
comes from. All these
Right.
kind of things. But I've never heard someone going, I'm gonna just start doing readings for other people so I don't have to focus on me. That's a first for me. I've never heard that before. It's really interesting.
So, controversial statement. I identify as an empath. And for years, I used my empathy as an excuse not to live a full life. And I was like drunk on the divine here. Like I would say things like, oh, I can't come to your party. I'm way too sensitive for that. Or I can't go to malls. I'm an empath. You wouldn't understand it. Or I don't have a lot of friends
Oh,
because empathy is so overwhelming. And then one day it hit me in meditation. Maybe the reason I don't have any friends and my finances are a mess and my body is a mess is because I'm using my empathy as an excuse not to live a full life. And so I teach a lot of empaths how to manage their energy. And one of the things I always try to teach them is the difference between projection of an emotion in an environment versus really like observing an emotion in an environment as a sensitive, intuitive person. Because I
right.
think there's this big misconception that if you're an empath or a sensitive person, you can't live a full, thriving life. And I'm not afraid of people's energy anymore. There's no crack in my aura. You can't throw daggers at me or all these things that we hear about. Like, I got it. I know how to observe energy and I know the difference between absorbing energy. But it took
Mhm.
some real deep therapy and trauma work, like you said, to realize I
Right.
was using it as an excuse.
So when you were just explaining yourself, like you can't go to parties and things, it sounded almost like you were like a psychic empath emo kid. Uh,
100%. With
right? Like I
with like a
can't, you wouldn't
dash of
understand.
agoraphobia.
I can't go out. You wouldn't understand. I can't
Yeah.
go to your party. Like
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And it was
That's
so ego driven. Like, this is one of the other
right.
things about intuition. Like, people really want to identify as psychics as gifted. That term is thrown around so often. I really, really don't like that term. First of all, my belief system for anyone watching is the most accurate psychic reading you can ever receive is going to be from yourself. That is
Mhm.
something I will say over and over and over again because we all have this inherent ability. We all have this ability to tune into universal wisdom and our own intuition, our own GPS, and it's really incredible. But the ego, I'll speak for myself. My ego really liked to attach to the idea that I was gifted, the idea that I
Oh
was
yeah.
special,
Oh
because that
yeah.
made me feel unique. Of course, I'm the chosen one. This entity came to me. I must be doing something right. Well, the entity comes to all of us, right? It's not an ego thing. So to decline invitations because I was so sensitive and so psychic was so ego driven. And it sort of makes me giggle now when I think back to those days. But, that was a long time ago. I've learned a lot about myself and I've done some work.
Well, so you were like the golden child, and Eddie Murphy was trying to protect you. I mean, that's
First of all, I love that movie. That is one of my
yes,
all-time favorite movies.
it's such a ridiculous 80s movie. I
It's
love that
such
movie.
ridiculous. Yes, you've seen that. That's very intuitive of you because I've seen that many, many times. Well
Something must
done.
have rubbed something must have rubbed off on me with all these conversations I've
Right.
had.
Sure. Well,
So
actually,
so
can
I,
I ask you a question? That's sort of
please.
interesting. So, even before the show, you and I were talking. So, it's all through the sound of my voice when you and I are talking. And you have like a really unique combination of energy when you speak. When you
Okay.
first speak, I see really, really deep blue. But then, towards like the end of your sentences or the tone of your voice, it will go into green, which are
Uh-huh.
very different colors. So blue is like introspection, it's wisdom, it's information. It always looks like a bookcase in my mind. You'll see stacks
Mhm.
and stacks of books because this person has to absorb information. They have to gather information, but they're usually a little bit shy. They're traditionally introverted, but then it goes into green, which is like the polar opposite. Green is like communication and creativity, and you'll see it around like writers and poets and speakers and presenters. So I would imagine in your lifetime, there was a little bit of a dramatic personality shift where some people that maybe knew you a long time ago would be a little bit shocked that now you like deliver information on a public platform. And by the way, do a really good job at it. But you were
Appreciate it.
confusing me at first because I was like, well, are you introverted or extroverted? And because you kind of flip back and
I'm
forth
I'm
energetically.
both. I'm
You
both.
are. That's
I'm
very
both. Yeah.
rare.
I am as if I may quote Clerks, I love people but hate gatherings.
Right.
Uh
I get that. I'm on board. I get that.
yeah. So it's no, it's very true that I'm happiest at home. I rather
Yeah.
not go out. And as I'm
Right.
getting older, I'm becoming more crotchety. So it's kind of
Sure.
like like I don't want to go anywhere. My home is my castle kind of situation. But when I'm thrown into a party or a public scenario, I turn on and
You can
I'm
do it.
off. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's just like yeah, my wife looks at me. She's like, I don't like what is like you don't want to go out, but if you do go out,
Right.
I can't
Right.
turn you off. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, that's kind of the way it is. So I'm both.
Yeah.
It's
It's
exactly you're
interesting.
exactly right.
Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
going back and forth. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
So when you decided to stop being an emo kid, a
Yeah.
spiritual emo kid,
Yeah.
and started to go dive deeper into your own do your own work.
Mm,
Really, and that's the thing, doing the work, having that dark night of the soul, kind of really doing that. Once you broke through all of that,
mm,
I went through that in my own life. Once I was
mm,
able to go past it, then I was like, okay, I could get to work now. When did
mm,
you decide to come out of the closet, of the
mm,
spiritual psychic closet, if you will,
mm, mm.
um, and tell the world, hey, here's my freak flag. I'm a
Yeah.
psychic. I'm an intuitive. I'm this because that's not something that is like I always joke. It clears a room,
Yeah.
especially
Well,
20 years ago. Especially 20 years
right.
ago.
Yeah. Well, so for me, I used to be a massage therapist, but I was a terrible massage therapist because I talked too much, and no one wants the massage therapist to talk too much.
That's
And
fair
readings
enough.
were just something I did on the side, right? I'd read cards, I'd give readings here and there. I lived in Dallas, Texas at the time.
Oh,
And when
nice.
I was 20 years old, the Dallas Observer did their best of at the time, and they selected me the best psychic in Dallas. And I didn't even know this was happening. So it was more like the universe pushed me into this being my focus. And I
Mhm.
remember the phone ringing off the hook and being petrified that I didn't know how to do 5 to 6 sessions a day. And then a TV show called 2 weeks later, and then a radio show called like a month later. And this public part of my work immediately presented itself, which was very unexpected, says the psychic, but very unexpected. And I was very overwhelmed by it. So I understood suddenly that the universe was saying I could do this if I wanted to. And then I write about this in my first book, but you know that already. I
Yeah.
worked with a Psychic Friends Network. I'd done all of these weird things, sort of like trying to find my home and my space. But publicly becoming a psychic was pretty easy. What ended up happening for me about 6 or 7 years was I didn't like that people were coming to me as a fortune teller. When's my boyfriend going to come back? What's my new
Yeah.
job? Contact my grandmother. And it just felt like this on demand service that wasn't fulfilling something deep inside of me. And as much as I love forecasting and giving you an idea of the direction that you're going at, it was really taking me some time to figure out how I was going to become a spiritual teacher. And how could I teach people about mindfulness and meditation and intuition and make predictions? And I almost felt like I couldn't give myself permission to do that. So becoming a psychic and declaring that to the world, pretty easy. Beginning to want to describe myself as more of a spiritual teacher, I had a really hard time with that. My own sort of self-criticism that my life needed to be perfect in order to be a spiritual teacher. I'm a
Right.
big believer that we're all a work in progress. I'm still working on myself. I can pull in divine information and still have insecurities and all of these things. So where I am now, that took a little bit more time. It wasn't probably until like my mid 30s, I'm 47 now, until my mid 30s that I felt really comfortable telling the world that I identify as a spiritual teacher. It's the combination of all things that brings me great joy.
I have to ask you this question. What was it like
Yeah.
working at the Psychic Network? Like that old,
So,
that, I mean, was it Cleo? Was it Miss Cleo or was it the actual
I mean, I may
Psychic?
have gotten fired from the Miss Cleo one, which is another story. But here's why. Guys, if you're watching this, hear me out. This is not a bad thing. I thought, let's give people bang for their buck. So if it's like $5 a minute, I'm going to give you the fastest reading you have ever had in your life. I did not know that if you did not have a minimum call length of 10 minutes per call, you got canned. And it was not like you didn't get a letter. You would just log in with your number and it wouldn't let you sign in anymore. And I was devastated. Remember, I'm like 17, 18 years old. I'm still trying to figure out the world. But the Psychic Friends Network, allegedly, I really believe that these things, I thought that this was real. I had 3 interviews. I took it really seriously. I was up in the middle of the night in my massage office, wearing my headset, waiting for my phone call to ring. I write about this in my book as well. The reason I quit the Psychic Friends Network is I got a
Yeah.
call one day. Someone called my extension and they had received a form letter in the mail
Mhm.
that said, like, Dear Susan, your psychic at extension 4257 needs to speak to you about, and then they list, and this was all fake. I didn't send any of those things out. That was complete. And she was screaming at me on the phone because it was actually her husband that got the letter, but he had passed away. And so I didn't know that they were basically a scam business. Like I genuinely thought it was real. Y'all can Google this.
Oh.
There was a period of time that if you were on government assistance, they would send out a list of jobs that you could get. And one of them was for the Psychic Friends Network. Yeah.
Wow.
So another thing that's been difficult for me, Alex, is sort of the blending of business and spirit. You know, there's so many
Right.
things behind the scenes that we aren't aware of. And I try to be like really cautious of that. I don't want to breed dependency and I want people to follow their own intuition and I want them to get their own oracle deck and pull some cards and all these things. But as a young kid, I was addicted to channels. I went once a week. No one should see an intuitive once a week, in my opinion. I gave all of my power away. I followed Osho for a while. Did you know the guru Osho? It was very,
Yeah, great documentary on
love that documentary.
that
But
documentary. That's
I was
another
giving,
conversation. We're going to go into OSHA in a second. No, no, no. We got to go to OSHA in a minute. Go ahead. Go ahead.
but I was giving my power away. So I saw
Sure.
people giving their power away from the Psychic Friends Network. Like I've done so many different things in the spiritual business and the world of self-help that it makes me worried sometimes. And I want people to be curiously cautious.
That's the one big thing that we try to do on the show and with the work that we're doing is to empower people to look within themselves. All the great gurus, all the great yogis, all the great ascended masters, all of them say the power is within you. You can do
Exactly.
what I can do and more. I mean, this is straight out of Jesus's handbook and Buddha's handbook.
Right.
It's all the same thing. Appreciate you saying that because it is something that so many people love to give their power away, just like you did, because it's
Mhm.
easier.
Yeah.
It's
And we do
it's
it. And so people give their power away to celebrity or people give their power away to, Instagram influencers right now. Like there's so many different versions. It's so
that's terrifying.
nuanced in our
Oh, it's
culture. Right?
terrifying.
I know, but it's
Terrifying.
true.
It's
It's fascinating.
yeah, like
We
you give
want,
away you give your power away to a white coat. And you really shouldn't. I mean, yes,
no,
they have value, they have information, they can heal you, but you need to listen to your intuition about
you
things.
have to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, so before we continue, I have to know OSHA. I mean,
Okay.
I was introduced to OSHA through that documentary.
Okay.
And
Oh, really? So through the documentary. Okay.
through the documentary, I was the first time I'd ever heard of Osho. This is
Wow.
I watched that pre Next Level Soul. So I
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
even doing Next Level Soul yet. Um,
Okay.
to my understanding, and please let me, all I know, I've done a little research on Osho. That documentary, I know how I've been in the film industry for a long time. I've been an editor for a long time and a director. I know things could cut to make things look like that.
Sure. Yeah. They're
Yeah,
building a story.
they're building a story. There were some things
A
that
100%.
were undeniable. Like that's not editing. There's some crazy crap going on.
Yeah.
But he has millions of followers still
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
world. And to
Yeah.
my understanding, his teachings were pretty profound. But
I
he
mean,
might have
I
been,
loved them. Yeah.
but was he a case of an imperfect messenger with a really powerful
So
message?
when I started following Osho, it's because I worked at a bookstore on Long Island where the owner of the bookstore was a sannyasin at the time. So he had a
Sure,
weekly meditation group that I started going to, and I was just exploring meditations.
sure.
I'm 6'6", and as someone that's awkward in their body, Osho's meditations are very physical. There's dancing, there's movement,
Yes.
and I had never
Yeah.
heard of that before. And I found that really freeing and interesting. Cut to just a visualization of me, 16 years old, spinning around a basement apartment in Glen Cove, New York, with a bunch of people in their 50s and 60s trying to find my center. It's an
Yeah.
interesting visual. One of the reasons I stopped seeing Osho, just this is my own perspective. So if there are
Yeah.
sannyasins out there, I mean, no disrespect. I didn't understand the concept of you had to change your name. And at that time, Osho had died. And so I was reading his books and I understood like he was a pretty powerful, cool guy. But then the skeptic in me said, well, I don't understand. If he's ascended, how am I going to get my new name? And they said, well, there's a group of people now that channels it for you. And I just
Oh,
thought, I can't wrap my head around that. That just didn't click for me. So I didn't want to wear the mala with his picture. And I didn't want to change my name, which then I wasn't quite as like popular in that circle at the time because I just wasn't like going to the next level. But here's the thing. I think Osho's teachings are really beautiful. I don't believe in all of them. He has a poetic way of writing. He has really interesting meditations out there. And I'm just a big believer in season to taste. Read as many cookbooks as you can, but then come up with your own recipes.
yes.
So I just sort of think of him as like the cosmic cookbook on a shelf of many books that I've read.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I just wanted to, I'd never heard of anyone. I've never met anyone who followed him. So
Oh,
I was
really?
curious. Yeah. I mean, that
Yeah.
documentary is absolutely amazing.
And what I love about the documentaries, even when I watch the documentary in the beginning, I'm on board. And then when things get a little strange, I feel that it's seductive in the beginning, this community of people supporting each other and
Oh, it's
loving and
perfect.
kindness
Oh, yeah.
and a Buddha field. Like, who wouldn't sign up for that? But then
Mhm. The
human
machine
beings,
guns came out.
that's exactly we
Machine
took
guns
a
came.
sharp left turn when I don't want to give it away for people that haven't seen it, but it takes a sharp left turn from the Buddha field.
Was it there like 30 Cadillacs or something like that?
Oh, Rolls
And
Royces. Yeah.
Rolls Royces.
No.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It was Rolls
Osho wouldn't be
Royces,
caught dead in a Cadillac. No way.
which is quite ascended, if I may add.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very enlightened. I'm like I cannot travel.
Well, he
So
was one of the first gurus that would talk about spirituality and wealth and prosperity. This wasn't Gandhi. This was like you can have nice things. The nicer the better. We deserve these things. So it was kind of a flex at the time and an interesting perspective for a guru to talk about that. But
but
there are
listen,
lots of things you could do with that money.
all I'm saying is one Rolls Royce is fine.
Right, not 23 or
The
whatever.
23 or 30 that he had, there was no
Yeah.
real you see, that's
Yeah.
where, and then when the machine gun showed up, I'm like,
Right.
what is happening? And for everybody listening, because I know we're going to get messages about it on the comments. The name of it is it Wild Wild Country?
It
If I
is, yeah.
remember. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
called Wild Wild Country. It's on Netflix. You have to watch it. It's
Do
amazing.
yourself a favor.
Do yourself a favor. It is epic. It is
Agreed.
absolutely an epic documentary. So when you started to come out and you became an
hmm
author,
hmm
how did you incorporate this idea of color? Can you talk to me a little bit about the color and what that means? Because I've spoken to people who read auras, but it
Yeah.
sounds like the way you're doing it is a bit differently. How does it work for you exactly?
Yeah. So for me, in the beginning, seeing energy around people, now we know that I said at the top of the show was about whether or not it was a safe environment, but then it turned into me studying different personality types. I am an incredibly shy person. Like, as much as I am honored to do an interview like this, there's a lot of self-talk beforehand. I have to meditate, I have to think about it. And I would observe the auras of other people and I would see different personality traits. And I would start to visualize those colors like a chameleon to try to shift my energy and vibration into a different kind of personality trait. And this is what I love about auras. It's not a fixed system. In numerology, your life path number is always the same. In astrology, this is your chart, this is how it works. When it comes to auras, you can literally transform and shift your energy. So I also prescribe colors to people for certain things. I empower them to visualize the way they decorate their home, the way they dress their body. You can actually visualize a specific color to transform your energy according to any situation or any time.
It's very interesting because I just had a feng shui master on
Yeah.
the other day, and she was talking a lot about color,
Mhm.
and color is very, very, very powerful.
Very.
And I said, and I always tell people, I'm like, if you don't believe color is powerful, paint your bedroom red and
Right.
let me know how that works out for you and how
Exactly.
you sleep.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And why are
Because
classrooms always yellow? Because it wakes you up and it stimulates the brain and it activates the mind and thought. I mean, advertising companies literally spend millions of dollars researching what colors will make you eat more, spend more, feel a specific emotion. Like it's not just woo. This is in the world of science as well.
well, I mean, if you just look at the button, that Amazon, the buy it now button, that color is billions of dollars in research. That's
100%.
that is the color that people click on most to buy. It's
Which is to
insane.
me is so interesting. So, I
Yeah.
mean, when I hear it from like a marketing perspective, it feels somewhat manipulative. So I try to see it more from the spiritual perspective, like what wakes up your heart, what makes you feel good, what
Correct.
relaxes you. And then it turns into like, what do I visualize before an interview? Or if someone's going on a first date, or if they're making a toast at their, sibling's wedding. You can literally, we do it with clothing. I stand differently in a suit versus pajamas. If I light a candle, the
Right.
meal feels more special. So we're ceremonial by nature, and color's just this interesting bridge between worlds. Alex, if a psychic tells me to like visualize my third chakra, I've been a psychic for 25 years. Even I close my eyes and I'm like, I think I'm visualizing my third chakra. If a psychic says close your eyes and visualize the color gold, I can do that. I can buy gold flowers. I can buy gold piece of artwork. Like it's a tangible thing that my mind can actually focus on. And then the momentum of the meaning behind it, whether you think it's placebo or energy, I don't care, but it's helping you step into a different part of your consciousness.
And I love the idea of you're using almost like feng shui color systems on yourself, not only in your
Right.
environment, but like
Yeah.
wearing a yellow jacket or wearing a red,
Right.
I mean, anyone who ever goes out has ever gone out if it's female, a red dress. That has a very, very different energy than a black dress
100%.
or
Yeah.
a blue dress or a yellow dress. It's a completely different vibe. And I've been working in the industry as long as I had the film industry. Color it's very, very important. Hence why, generally speaking, the olden days, the bad guy wore black, the good
Right.
guy
Well,
wore white.
so the stereotypes of color are so funny to me.
Yeah.
People always joke, oh, you must see brown or black and white, like it's this terrible thing. Earth tones are so powerful. The reason you
Hmm.
see a lot of creative people only wear black is because black represents all color. Like it's literally made up of every single vibration. And so you'll see designers that will only wear all black, or artists that will only wear all black because they're so creatively inspired. They need to pull their energy in. It's the color for grounding. When I lived in New York City, I mostly wore earth tones because space is a commodity. So if I'm on the subway and I'm surrounded by people, I want to pull my energy in. When I moved to Los Angeles, suddenly I started noticing I was wearing bigger, brighter colors because I had more wiggle room. I had more space. I could expand my aura a little bit more. So, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a negative color or a bad color. Every color has energy and influence and wisdom. And I encourage people to play with all of them just to see how they feel and what comes up for them based on each specific color.
So when you were talking to me about my voice and the
Yeah.
blue turning into green, is that just purely within, like you're kind of reading me through my voice, or are you actually seeing those colors
Both.
around me? But is it like you
It's
seeing the
both.
aura? You're seeing the
Yeah,
aura as
yeah.
well?
And I can teach anybody to do that. It takes me 15 minutes. I've never had anyone not be able to do it. I can teach anyone to see energy. It's fairly simple, in my opinion. Our brain wants it to be more complicated, but anybody can see energy. So yeah, I physically see it around people. But the only way that I can see it, which I'm trying to figure out, is I do have to hear the sound of your voice. So back in the day
Interesting.
when I saw clients in person, people would bring pictures. I can't do it. Say your sister's name and I can read the energy through your voice, but it's the vibration. So if we're going to go into deep metaphysics, everything is vibrating, right? Everything is
Sure.
energy. So the sound of your voice, the tone, that vibration, that's what sort of pulls me into the energy. That's how I see it. That's why I loved doing radio back in the day, because I could just have my eyes closed and just listen to callers' voices and be able to immediately tune in. Whereas if I'm talking on Zoom or if I'm doing, a live event, skeptics will say, well, you're reading body language, which by the way, body language is a form of energy. So there's nothing wrong with also connecting with body language, but that's a whole other
Mhm.
story. But usually what I do is I turn away from people. I ask them to say their name 3 times, and that's how I start to see energy.
You kind of joked earlier that that you didn't see something coming. Like the psychic saying, "I didn't see something coming."
Right.
That's one of the easiest kind of digs that people do to psychics. So like, "Oh, you didn't see that coming in your life? You didn't see that
Totally.
car accident?" Can you
Yeah.
explain from a psychic's perspective or intuitive's perspective
Yeah.
why that is? Because from my point of view, you're a human being. I
Yeah.
understand that it's not easy for you to read your own life and your
Hmm.
own cards as easily as you could read somebody else's. And sometimes it's blocked. Like
Yeah.
I know channels who cannot, they need
Yeah.
a reading from somebody else. How does it work for you?
So a good example of this is when I met my husband, and this was 27 years ago. I opened the door, 25 years ago. I opened the door, I made eye contact with him, and I heard in my head, "You will marry him." And then the next thing I heard in my head is, "Am I drunk?" That was the second thing that I heard. So I had this divine moment of, "You will marry him," crystal clear, and then immediate self-doubt. And like, that can't be right. So the divine part of me spoke in that moment and said, "You should take this more seriously. There's something here. I want you to be mindful. I want you to really think." I told a friend, I didn't tell him because that would be spooky. But again, we've been together for 25 years, but even I didn't believe it. So if a client comes to me and I know absolutely nothing about this person, it is a total blank screen for me. I'm completely neutral. I don't have any investment in the game. This is the energy that comes to me based on the topics. I'm completely neutral. For myself, I have certain things that I want to happen. I want them to manifest for me. So it's a little bit harder internally for everyone, not just me, to decipher the difference between the most divine version of yourself preparing you for something and steering you in the right direction versus the voice of fear or ego or insecurity or whatever it is that might be telling you something is going to happen. And I used to think if I can just resist that, if I can just finally understand everything 100%, I will have, reached like spiritual mastery or something like that, like we talked about earlier. I don't think it's possible to predict things 100% for myself and or for other people. And I know that can be disappointing and it's not the most sparkly answer. It would be much easier for me to just say I can, with 99% accuracy, but I just don't think that's how it works. For me, the universe hands me like the book of someone's life or even my own life, and I have a moment to read the book jacket. I get the highlights, I can skim some of the pages, and like a puzzle, I try to understand where I think it's going and how to prepare for what I think is going to happen. But there's adventure and there's free will and there's excitement and there's changes of energy that are the beauty of being on this planet and on this earth. And so we just can't predict it 100% for anyone. I don't think that's possible.
Right, because there's also free will and things do change. You're almost talking about the probability. Like you're more likely going to marry this person. You're more
Right.
like because that's a really strong connection. But like, are
Yeah.
you going to move to New York for that job? It looks like it right now, but then you might get a call from San Francisco for a job, and you're like, I'm going to go do that one.
It's in the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
I have been invited to do things professionally that the introvert in me and the insecure person inside of me wants to say no immediately. Absolutely not. I'm not ready for that. So I call them energy invitations. When the universe sends an energy invitation into your life, oftentimes it's whether or not you're ready to level up. Are you ready to take a look at your shadow self and what it's bringing up for you and step into this and try as hard as you possibly can? Or are you not? So when someone comes to me for a session, I'm seeing the energy invitations. Here's the possibility. Here's a direction that your life could go in. But then we have to bring the energy down and see where we are in the now, where we are in the present moment. Has this person done the self work? Do they understand their shadow self? Do they understand their own trauma and how this is going to affect and sort of rattle the system? And then we're estimating based on where they are how that's going to unfold, and excitingly, offering tools and tips on adjustments that we could all make to accept those energy invitations to live our best possible life.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Now, you've also spoken about the shadow side of color. What
Yeah.
does that mean?
So so I have an oracle deck that I made with my friend Bradley Valentine. It's called Angels and Auras, and we offer shadow messages, which is when the card presents itself inverted. And I did not know that was going to trigger people as much as it
Oh,
did.
oh, yeah.
We have people that try to guess from the back of the card whether or not it's inverted based on the artwork on the back. People really see shadow messages as this negative bad thing. Every color has so we talked about blue earlier, right?
Mhm.
So blue is the color of truth and wisdom. I often call it the information junkie. It's someone that's constantly absorbing information. But if you only had blue in your aura, this would mean that you were stuck. This would mean that you were using information and going inside of yourself as a way not to be a part of the world and as a way to sort of hide. And part of the lesson of blue, or the shadow side, is fear. So if someone really starts to understand the color blue, they end up facing a lot of fears in their lifetime in order to move forward. Like, it almost becomes like a little bit of a thrill and a rush for them. And you'll see as you get older, as things get taller, you think, no, I can do that. I can leap farther. I can go more. There's always a shadow side to every single color. I tend to have a lot of orange in my aura. That's someone who's very intuitive. That's a life coach, but we get distracted by giving advice to people and forget to take care of ourselves. So there's an imbalance there to the point where we get dizzy. I tend to get very, very dizzy. So the shadow side is the wisdom. People in the United States only understand this, but when you have a kid that doesn't eat their vegetables, and so you put like spinach in your brownies. So the shadow side is the spinach in your brownie. It's your ego. It's the perception of who you think you are, who you're supposed to be. It's the wisdom. It's the life lesson. And as an intuitive, really as a seeker of intuitive guidance, I sort of got tired of psychics just telling me all the great things about me. Your love of your life is right around the corner. You're so strong. You're an old soul. Like, it feels good, but 3 months later, my life didn't change. When I started going to spiritual teachers who would say, hey, you criticize yourself too much and you've got some self-doubt in there, and here's how that's getting in your way. Well, that's when things started to change. So if you're at home and you pull an oracle card and you get a shadow message, if it's inverted, this is not the universe reprimanding you. This is not a prediction. It's a reflection. This is the universe saying, like, I believe in you to do this work, to grow and to evolve and to change. And I believe in you for eating your vegetables, if we're going to whittle it down to like its purest form. But in my opinion, shadow work is where we really grow.
Well, yeah, I mean, without the obstacles in our lives, we never could grow. You need resistance in order to grow.
I have a family member right now who's getting married and they're engaged, and everybody was like, oh, it's so wonderful and you're so in love and you're so in love. And then I asked this person on their own, have you guys had an argument yet? And at first they were a little offended by the question. And I said, listen, I'm not worried for you when everything's going great. Like, if you guys go away and you hit all green lights on your road trip, that's going to be easy. But when you go away and the flight gets canceled and it's raining and there's nothing to do, I want to know how you manage the argument versus that's shadow work. So couples that are like, we never argue and everything's okay. I don't know about that. Of course we argue. This is my soulmate. I adore him. But yes, we argue and we hold space for each other and we listen and we communicate. So it's the same thing with energy and color. People love to tell me what color they love. I'm way more curious about the color that's too spicy for you or that irritates you, because we can sink our teeth into that. There's something there.
God, I don't even know what that is. I'm trying to think about like what's the color that it just like the whole everything here in our studio is very earth tone. Everything's
Yeah,
very grounded, very earth
very
tony.
good for you. Yeah.
Gold, some like golden colors and earth and browns and the greens and
Well,
things
gold
like
is
that.
interesting because gold is the color of like the visionary. So gold is self-employed people. 90% of the time, someone with gold in their aura is self-employed. It's also someone though that wants to be the provider. So like if you're watching this and you're drawn to gold, it's not just about you. A gold person wants to like create income and prosperity for other people. That makes them really happy. Sometimes a gold person forgets to enjoy what they've created because they're so, focused, you know what I mean? They're on to the next thing because they're so goal oriented. But it's a great color for manifesting for people out. So that's a great thing though. So if you're an emotional person, like gold does not come naturally to me because I'm overly emotional. I had to learn to use gold to write multiple books and have a successful business. And I'm blessed to travel the world doing the work that I do, but that took a lot of gold energy for me.
Now I have to ask you that, the world is a little bit upside down at
Is
the
it?
moment, and a little bit some stuff's going on
Yeah.
around the planet. But there has been this giant shift, and I talk about it on the show quite often because I think people are really interested in it. That there is a
Mm,
shift in consciousness happening.
mm,
It has been happening since, I mean, it's been happening since the beginning, but the
mm,
speed of the shift, even in our lifetime, I mean, from where we were in the 70s, you were born in the 70s, I was born in the 70s,
mm,
to where we are now is,
mm.
I mean, this conversation does not happen other than in the back of a metaphysical store
Mystery
somewhere.
schools. Yeah, yeah,
A mystery school, exactly. Mystery school bookstore, yes.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so, but now these are becoming much more mainstream. These conversations. Where do you see humanity's kind of consciousness going over these next few years? Because you were just talking about shadow work. I feel that humanity as a collective, we got some shadow work to go through, and we've been going through it. Would you agree?
100%. First of all, you use the perfect word, in my opinion. You use the word speed. The Even since 2020, our
Hmm.
sort of concept of time has completely shifted. And everyone kept thinking, well, it's going to come back to normal, whatever normal is. It's going to come back to a steadier pace. And it's only getting faster. But here's the cool thing. I think that can present itself in two very significant possibilities. If one has a strong foundation, a sense of self, a spiritual practice, an emotional practice, if there's any roots that keep you grounded, that speed is going to be okay for you to maintain. You'll connect yourself, you can manifest more, you can feel more connected, you can, it's really limitless, the potential. If you do not have a strong foundation, if you have not done any work to sort of really ground yourself and understand who you are, it is going to feel like you are in a hurricane or a tornado and everything is outside of your reach. So it begs us to be a little bit more honest. Honesty and sort of the perception of things feeling distorted and changing, that is all going to go away. And sometimes seeing shadow work is accepting all of the mistakes that we've made and I don't want to curse here, but the stuff that comes up with the shadow work. So we have a choice. You can either ground yourself and have a foundation and step into it with your own magnifying glass and start taking a look at what's really going on with your own choices and your own belief systems, or it will be thrust upon you and you'll feel like your head is spinning and will feel completely dissociated and uncomfortable.
So is that why it seems like people are kind of losing it more and more
They're
because the
popping.
foundation, yeah, there's pops happening all around, things that I never saw before. Insane, just things that are insane. People, the way people treat each other, anger, frustration, also just their equilibrium seems to be off because things that were foundational for them has now cracked or is being torn down in all walks of life, religion and government and
And
money and
here's the
all
thing
these
though,
kind of
if
things.
you don't, because even spiritual people do this, an election
Yeah.
will happen and then everyone freaks out
Yeah.
and thinks the world, and we've got radio ads of like how to build your bunker and storing food for the next 3 years. So when people get triggered, they polarize. Which is not to say that what's happening on the planet is quite triggering. It's triggering for all of us. It's waking us all up. It's making us look at life completely differently. But when we get triggered, if you do not have the tools to bring yourself back to your center, I get triggered all the time. I'm not saying that I walk through life, with rose-colored glasses. I'm constantly triggered, but I do have the tools to see the trigger. I do have the tools to find my way back to my center. And then once the trigger has happened, I'm interested in doing the digging to figure out how I can approach it differently and how my behavior and my belief system collectively does change the planet. So there's a lot of finger pointing going on. If you would change, if you would change, if you would change. And
Right.
all these you statements aren't going to get us anywhere. More I statements and what's going on inside of me and us and yourself and how to manage that energy, that's how we find more peace on the planet, in my opinion.
Do you foresee a little bit more shadow work ahead for
I do.
us?
Yeah, I do. Especially for the US. I mean, it's in particular, it's certainly in all different parts of the country, but
Mhm.
it's definitely a buckle your seatbelt kind of a thing. Now, some people on a roller coaster throw their hands up and scream, and it's cathartic. So you do you. It's up to you. There are other people that white knuckle it and get nauseous.
That's such a great analogy because I never thought of it that way, but I always tell people, I'm like, look, even in the Great Depression, some of the greatest companies in the world were created and started during the Great
Yeah.
Depression.
And
Same
art
thing
was
in
born and music.
the
Yeah,
Renaissance and Renaissance, all
right.
this kind of
Yeah.
these dark out of the Dark Ages came the Renaissance, all
Yeah.
these things. But I never thought of the. You're right. We're all on a roller coaster. It's gonna be, and it's a wooden one. It's an old wooden.
It's rickety.
It's rickety. It's wooden, and it's gonna shake your soul. I've been in
That's
those.
exactly right.
They're horrendous. I walk out like that thing. That's
Right.
where we're all going. Now, some people, woo,
Mm.
this is awesome. And other people are going to be like, but the same thing is happening. It's
Right.
just different perspectives and
Totally.
different experiences of the same event. So during the pandemic, a lot of people really, it was very difficult for them.
Yeah.
But a lot of people changed their lives. A lot of people started businesses. A lot of people, got married because they're like, I don't want, because they were forced to live with this person for
Common law
6
marriage.
Yeah, exactly. We've been together for 6 months. Let's just get married. Or the other side, like we've been together for 6 months. We need to get a divorce.
Yeah.
That's
But
kind of thing.
I do think, like back in the day, I would read things in spiritual books about different dimensions, and I'd kind of roll my eyes. Again, says the guy
Oh
that
yeah,
sees like colors around people. But I would be like, what are these dimensions? But the truth is, right now, I can guarantee most people listening to this have been at a party now in the past year where you feel like everyone's living in a different world. Their belief systems, how they feel about the world, their response to things. And I think this is like real time, the difference of energy dimensions of where you are. And some of it is really choice and perspective, like with the roller coaster idea, screaming or white knuckling it. And so a lot of it for me is learning to empathize and not villainize people for a different
yeah,
belief system or a different way of life. Like we're closer than we've ever been as far as access, and the farthest we've ever been as far as heart connection. And so empathy and perspective and communication and understanding are what I choose to use as sort of the fuel to understand this new era that we're in versus protect your energy, bury food in the backyard, these sort of like doomsday prophecies. That's not my vibe.
no, and I agree, and I agree with you 100%. You said talk about dimensions and energy. That's a really interesting idea because I've had multiple quantum physics physicists on the show who I love talking to, NASA rocket scientists, like these kind of people who talk about spirituality
Love.
and with and they mix metaphysics with quantum physics.
Yeah,
The idea of you were saying in the same party, there's multiple kind of realities because
totally.
it's one person's reality is Fox News. The other person's reality is CNN. Another one's is,
No news. Then there's the no news person.
there's no news people. Another one is just watching Next Level Soul. Another one's just reading your books. Like
Yeah.
there's different realities for everybody. But I've actually heard from multiple channels as well and mystics that there is the veil is thinning to the
Totally.
point
Yeah.
where we're starting to see shifts happening almost in real time because I don't know. There was points in the 2010s that I'm walking around going, I feel like I'm in bizarro world. I
Right.
feel like I've walked into another dimension that this does. I mean, and I would tell that to people all the time. I'm like, doesn't this feel like if you were watching an 80s movie, like the Upside Down world, or the
Yes.
world that's all
Yes.
gangsters, or the world
Yeah.
that's all marshmallows, or like it was like that kind of weird thing. And it's getting worse, meaning like, or more intense, not worse, but getting more intense. So my question to you is then, in this shifting of realities, by your choice and where you want to go, there will be a separation of these higher vibrational souls, like like we're talking about, like people who are moving towards more of, like they call it, the fifth dimension, and others who
Hmm.
want to hold on to the old ways, want to hold
Hmm.
on to the more three-dimensional world. And there's literally
Hmm.
two existences happening.
But in that separation, when the energy separates, you could
Yeah,
also perceive that as the door opening. Because
right.
with all of these different belief systems, the other thing that I've started to notice too is how certain belief systems have started to overlap. And one community will echo something that from years ago, these two communities would never have anything similar at all. And
Right.
certain worlds where I thought, well, where did that come around from the back? And like, where did that start to come from? So when the veil begins to thin, I think people start to lose this feeling of safety and like they are going to
Right.
be untethered. I see it completely differently. When the
Mhm.
veil begins to dissolve, we start to see that we are all of the same energy and of the same space and of the same pure form. But we resist that. I mean, we grit our teeth and we sink our feet into the ground, and we do not want that to happen. But these differences become a sense of oneness if we want them to. And that's ultimately where I think we're going, but it could be a bumpy ride to get there.
But that's the ego that's fighting. The ego
Totally.
doesn't want us to be a part of a giant thing. No, no, I'm unique. I'm special. I'm
Yeah.
gifted. Uh,
I have the right way. I have the right
I,
opinion.
yes,
Yeah.
we are the chosen ones. You are
Right.
not.
Yeah.
That's always fun. That's always fun. That
Sorry to
God only,
say.
that God only chose the one group.
Yeah.
Ignore the other 3 or 4 billion. Just
Right.
this one group. Like, it never made sense to
But
me.
I have this like obsession, Alex, with universal languages. So we talked about color being a universal language, but there are other universal languages like sports.
Yes.
Like every 4 years, the world comes together and we compete and we bring our strongest and we try to be soulful about it and really unify. And food, like if you've ever been to another country and they want to welcome you into their food or share with you their art and their music, like these fundamental universal languages are really sort of like the web of energy that keeps the entire planet and consciousness together. And again, we have a choice. We can see this as differences and weird, and I don't understand it, and I can't get along with the person behind me, or let alone 3,000 miles away from me. Or we can learn that these universal languages are really similar at their fundamental basics. And that's a choice that we could all sort of dive into and connect and just bring peace to the planet.
How do you what advice do you have for somebody who wants to connect with their soul consciousness, this higher your higher self, this divine wisdom that we are all connected to? But on this side it's a little harder to connect, as opposed to on the other side, what I've heard of all these near-death experiences, that everything's instant over there. There's no mud to go through, while
Right.
here we're in this guck. It's very, very dense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
how, in this dense muck, how do we stick our antenna up and connect to that signal?
meditation is key. It's such a boring answer. I mean, listen, I love crystal grids. I love astrology. I love candles. I love any tool that helps you find your center. But it is my belief system that the core energy at that center is mindfulness and stillness. There is so much noise on the planet. So whether you use exercise or a mantra or affirmations or crystals or oracle cards or breath work or prayer, whatever you use to find your center, to tune out the noise and listen to the most divine aspect of yourself, that is the key to spiritual connection.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests.
Oh, I didn't know
What
this
is
before. Okay.
What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Oh, content. Um, I have this belief system where at the end of the day, when I get in bed and I just feel content, it wasn't the best day. It's not like when your kids are born or the day you got married or the day you got the promotion. Those are marker days, but it's big energy. I'm talking about that perfect temperature. You fulfilled stuff. I got things done. I connected with people. I feel good, took the dog for a walk, laughed. I get in bed and I just feel content. That's ideal.
If you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Dougal, what advice would you give him?
Wow. That's a big one. He would be so tickled to know the adventure that I have had the pleasure of going on. Like it kind of brings I have a picture of myself as a child on my desk because occasionally I like to remind him of what we're going through. So I would just tell him to prepare for like really tremendous, exciting joy and adventure. And it's a really fun ride.
How do you define God or source?
I define God or source as pure, unconditional love. A love so deep and profound that in this moment, any single person listening, exactly where you are, who you are, every life circumstance is purely loved. That to me is God or source.
What is love?
Love is probably one of the best feelings on the planet. It is a knowing of someone that's like so deep in your fiber and your core and your soul and your aura, that connection. It's connection, it's understanding, it's knowing. God, I could answer this question for hours. It's something I hope everyone experiences.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
The ultimate purpose of life is to learn and to grow.
And where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
So you can find me at dougalfraser.com, which is Dougall, Fraser, Fraser.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on all the things. But I'd love to connect and get to know each other.
And do you have any parting messages for the audience?
If there's one thing that I would want people to remember is that I really do believe that the most accurate intuition is going to come from self. So find what works for you, whatever tool, method, or form of connection that brings you into your center. I can guarantee that will dramatically change your life. And it's just a beautiful path to be on.
Dougal, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, man. I could talk to you for at least another few hours, but I do truly, truly appreciate you. Your energy is so beautiful, and your teachings and what you're trying to do for the world is really appreciates you, my friend. So thanks again so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Alex. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it. You're really good at this. So this was my honor and my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.